Sanjeev Bhaskar, music for The Resource. Thank you, sir. Right. What are your first experiences, or were your first experiences of Shakespeare, and were they good, bad, ugly?
My first experience of Shakespeare were not good at all. As a kid growing up in West London, you first accessed it through school. I mean, the interesting thing is that, in hindsight, you kind of then realise how many kind of common everyday phrases have come from Shakespeare, and as a kid you just kind of used them without thinking. And so we were already using Shakespeare's phrases anyway, but school was it was a tough journey through Shakespeare, because I don't think the teachers actually knew how to teach Shakespeare, and so the language was alien, the kind of rhythms were alien to us, and it didn't feel like the way anybody spoke. The plot had to be explained to us because the words were so kind of otherworldly to us. And then when we were taken to see Shakespeare plays on school trips and things like that, they were incredibly stodgy, incredibly declamatory in the way that they were performed as well. And so I think it kind of universally put all of us off. I can't remember anyone at school going, whoopee, we're going to a Shakespeare play. I mean, it was just, oh, great, really? And the most amusing thing for us, as kids going to see it, I'm talking probably about 13 or so, 14, something like that. The most amusing thing was seeing actors spitting when they spoke. That was the most entertaining thing. And in fact, we went to see...
Never gets boring, that, does it?
No, it's because it's real. But it was, I can't remember, I think it might have been Julius Caesar that we went to see, and somebody, walked to the front of the stage, Mark Antony probably, and made a speech and spat at that point, as one normally does, but streams of spittle. And the first 3 rows of kids all kind of went, and that was the most entertaining thing about it. And then I studied Julius Caesar for GCSE, O-levels. And when I started to read it, and I saw the film with Marlon Brando in it, and then I thought, wow, this is really something. And then the kind of, the politics of it and all that stuff, the kind of personal relationships within the play became a lot more accessible, I think.
Do you you grew up in Hounslow, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Because my grandparents used to live Whitton, actually.
Oh yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in Hounslow, and I remember going back there. I mean, going back like 30 years, and it was a really interesting place, Hounslow, because it was a huge had a huge cultural shift in the sort of 70s or 60s, 70s.
That's right, it did.
And every time I used to go there, it was a very, very different place. So I can only imagine that, like school. I went to school in Sheffield, which was also had a similar thing at the time of the miners' strike and all that stuff, and it changed the whole community. So the communities were dealing with lots of different things at that point. So Shakespeare was almost the least important thing that was going on. So in your groups or in your classes, how obviously it didn't necessarily grab people, but was it because English as well wasn't important in the sense of like, well, or lessons weren't important? Is it just that thing? Because when I grew up in Sheffield, it was like learning's shit, learning's uncool, kind of. And I wonder if that's one of those reasons. Or
That's a very very interesting point that you raise, actually. I mean, I think that's a really, really, really good question. Well done. Well, that's a really, really good question. I think that bizarrely, the school that I went to, which was on the borders of Hounslow and Southall, which is a very kind of Asian area, your schooling up until the sixth form was kind of dominated by kids who were never going to study beyond 16. I mean, they were going to leave at 16. And so therefore the build-up to that, the years 13, 14, 15, etc., they were utterly uninterested in learning anything, because the whole point was, let me get to 16 so I can get out and get a job. And so the kind of onus on learning then, I don't think was that great. Once we got into the sixth form, and the school was about a third Asian at that time. When you got into the sixth form, it was probably about 75% Asian. And the whole thing about learning then, in terms of aspiration, which was very much part of the Asian thing about education, then suddenly kicked in. I think it was predominantly science and maths because it was Asian kids who were going to be doctors or engineers or accountants. So English as a subject, fell away in terms of its interest. I was I did maths, physics, and economics.
Bloody hell!
I know. I still, my parents now feel guilty.
You're a rarity.
Forcing me to do it because I was desperately interested in English, and what I should have done was English plus a couple of other subjects. But so by that stage, I think that the issue that you're talking about in terms of learning itself changed very suddenly, but the impetus to learn anything surrounding English or English literature suddenly fell away. So the kids in the sixth form weren't reading books, they weren't accessing plays or anything like that. And also going to the theatre was very alien, has always been very alien to the Indian culture, because movies, yes, in their millions, but theatre still in India is a very, very small kind of slightly middle class thing. Right. And so we kind of inherited that. The interesting thing now when I look at it in terms of the language of, and I mean that in the broadest term, of Shakespeare's plays, is that it requires a sort of mental shift, a kind of emotional shift into that world to be comfortable with the language and the movement and the rhythms. It's a similar thing that we did as kids when we watched Bollywood movies, is that as Bollywood movies, likened to musicals, the sort of MGM musicals, you did a logic shift, because I interviewed a director once, an Indian film director, and I said, look, how do you watch an Indian film? And he said, well, in the West, you follow the narrative, you follow the plot, you follow the logical plot. Yeah. And he said, in an Indian film, you don't. And what you do is follow the emotional narrative.
Which makes sense, I'll totally get that.
So then you kind of, when you apply that to something like Shakespeare, you kind of then go, okay, let me dispense with the plot part of it and let me follow the emotion and let me follow that path through it. And suddenly you read it in a very, very different way. You access it in a different way. So I think that, the Indian kids, had they had access to good Shakespeare performances, I think would have got it. Yeah. I think that at that time, nobody was going to make that connection.
And did it feel like... I don't know what the cultural balance was like at that point, but did it feel like Shakespeare for you was a very sort of white British kind of thing, or was it just another play, that just another writer that kind of you either interested in or you weren't? Like any writer could be.
No, I think you're right. I think we saw it as very much a white British thing. It was part of British heritage. We were aware of that very early on. In the same way that, Einstein was a byword for kind of genius, Shakespeare was a byword for kind of complicated English. Yeah. And although, Shakespeare, genius as well, I think we were kind of knew that early on, simply by the kind of context within which William Shakespeare would be mentioned, without ever having kind of read or seen the plays. Yeah. And I think that, in terms of the cultural take on it, it was so low down. You had to do it as one of your subjects. Yeah, so the whole thing was that you were being forced to do it. And I'm not sure many of the kids where I grew up ever then, on their own, under their own steam, read Dickens or kind of even more George Orwell or anything like that, because it was very much the thing you had to do to pass the test. And so it wasn't seen as pleasure at all. And also because time-wise, we were taken up by trying to keep up with the latest pop culture things, whatever that might have been, music, TV and film. And then we had the kind of, separate culture at home that we were trying to spin that particular plate as well. And that was through watching the movies or going to see cousins and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff. So in a way, we just didn't have time for Shakespeare.
No, I can imagine. It's weird because it's such a part of British culture. But I grew up in a very working class environment, despite that I don't sound that now. And so it was like, oh well, this is just about people with money. That's all it was to me. And I think that's kind of, again, there were teachers that didn't really even know what they were teaching, but it was on the curriculum and they were supposed to do it. I'm glad they did, because in whatever way it did affect me, it was still a little part of the jigsaw that later connected for me. But it must be very hard to teach. Anyway.
See, I think it's an interesting thing about class. I mean, Shakespeare was always viewed as highfalutin. In the same way that somebody from a sort of working class, sort of middle class aspirant background as myself, you've used a long word. People would go, "Who do you think you are? Coming in here with your fancy words." You kind of go look at Shakespeare and you kind of go, who do you think you are? Yeah, and I think that whereas now, once anybody has read up on it, one knows that, the plays were written for the masses. They weren't written for the highfalutins. And actually the storylines and the emotions absolutely reinforce that. I think the barrier has always been the language. And so until you kind of say, no, these are kind of slang words, but of that time. They're not there to kind of make you look foolish or to test you in any way. That's not the point of the language.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the thing that
That's
becomes
a good point,
the barrier,
actually. Yeah.
Which is kind of you can, a lot of kids, probably myself included, just went and felt slightly stupid. Yeah. You kind of go, I don't really know what they're saying. I know a lot of the words are English, but I don't know what.
And there's always one person that seems to understand it, isn't there? What am I not getting?
Always gets beaten up.
That's true too. Oh gosh, that is true. So how old are your children?
I've got a stepdaughter who's 22 and a son who's 10.
So do you know what they think about Shakespeare? I mean, being a younger generation as well, or in that way?
Well, my stepdaughter has kind of accessed it, the being forced to do it when you're a kid, and then has accessed it as a young adult, and loves it, and kind of gets it. And I think that my son, who's 10, who's seen his mum do Much Ado About Nothing,
which was the RSC production.
It was the RSC production, which I was asked to do and I couldn't do.
Oh no!
So that would have been great. So I'm still hoping at some point that I can play Benedict. But
sure.
He went to see that, and I think that there's a big difference in the way that Shakespeare is now accessed than when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, you were taken to the kind of the nearest theatre to see a kind of semi-professional production of it, done in a very kind of reverent, I'm sure they thought, truthful way. Yeah. And the difference is now that you've got a generation that can access, great contemporary actors who perform it differently, who will have their take on it, and also the films. I mean, even the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet, or my favourite Shakespearean film is Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado.
Isn't it just beautiful, that film? It's incredible, isn't it?
For me, it's just it kind of made Shakespeare kind of not only accessible, but fun and sexy and contemporary in the way that it was shot. Yeah. It's just a wonderful, wonderful film.
It captured the beauty, didn't it? Visually, it captured the beauty of the language in the visuals. It was something about what he did with that film was just.
Again, I think you now see actors and companies perform it in a way that's not just somebody standing there declaiming. That there's conversation taking place, and I went to see there was one performance of a play that I went to see where I realised that I would never be a great actor. And it was, rather than feeling despondent afterwards, I thought it's good to know your limits. And that was seeing Mark Rylance do Hamlet, which was...
You saw that, because I've worked with Mark, but I didn't see that.
Oh my goodness, it was kind of like... It was just extraordinary. I mean, I sat there thinking, wow, apart from just the commitment of the performance... Everything was made clear. And then after that, because my ear was then tuned, at someone's house, Sam West just did the To Be or Not to Be speech. And I thought, wow, that's good. Man, that's just, the layers in that are fantastic. and suddenly your access to it is kind of is very, very different. So my son, and obviously because he's in a house where people are interested in this sort of thing, the kind of Shakespeare animated tales.
Oh yeah, they're brilliant, weren't they?
We could show him those, and so he gets a sense of the kind of the ideas. My first paying job as an actor was for the Tar Arts Theatre Company.
Oh yeah.
And they would on occasion, take Shakespeare's plays and put a kind of South Asian spin on them in some way. And I did a TIE thing. I got 115 quid a week.
I did a lot of TIE for the first 2 years.
Most beautiful £115 I'd ever earned after kind of 10 years in marketing. So then kind of go, and we did The Tempest. And it was 2 people and a bunch of puppets. And we took it to schools and performed it to 8 and 9-year-olds. And then did workshops with them afterwards. We did a 40-minute version where Prospero was a puppet and I was Ariel. And we used bits of cloth and there's things that you do, that kind of stuff. And what was really, really interesting were the kind of discussions afterwards, where we would kind of say, what do you think it's about? Is Caliban bad? Was he kind of... And really, really interestingly, kids of that age would kind of say something like, well, it's not Caliban's fault, he was there first, and then Prospero came, and you go, wow, that's a really profound thing to say. I mean, you've just understood colonialism, at your age, through this language and this story, and you kind of go, that's what makes it accessible to kids. And that was a real eye-opener for me. So we very much kind of said to a 10-year-old, certainly, it's great. Yes, the language is a bit weird and a bit difficult, but, follow the emotional story. It doesn't matter if you don't understand every word. It doesn't matter if you don't understand every kind of speech. A good actor will give you the sense of what that speech means anyway. And, I mean, in the last couple of years, I've seen 2 very different and fantastic Othellos. It was Lenny Henry's Othello.
I missed that one, really, unfortunately.
And he was kind of this, Lenny's a big guy.
Yeah.
And so, that whole thing about stature and the rest of it and the layers of pain and subjugation he's gone through was very apparent in that. And then Adrian Lester's Othello, which was extraordinary. I think
agree.
That's possibly one of the best Shakespeare productions I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen Othello loads of times and I'd read it. And it was the first time that I realised it could be funny.
Yeah,
and it was just the relationship between him and Rory Kinnear and the way they played it was just amazing.
It was fantastic, that production.
Yeah, it was real kind of life-changing production.
And the way Rory as Iago just planted little seeds of doubt. He was so deft at doing that. And you got how Othello could just make. You just got how he just got wound up and how it became this bigger thing in his head. It was so well put together, that production.
Well, also the kind of I'd always seen Iago play the envy and the bitterness, and I'd never seen it played with a cheek.
Yeah.
And that was the interesting thing to add that to it made him truly twisted, because you kind of go, actually now I understand why Iago would be attractive as a friend in the first place, because he's got a bit of sparkle.
Totally.
He's not just he's not just that.
Yeah.
He is this kind of guy who's kind of sarcastic and sharp, and that's quite matey. And that was for the first time that was clear to me. I thought it was an extraordinary production.
Yeah. No, it was.
But my point being that kids can now, anyone can now access productions like that, as well as the kind of more traditional stuff that is still played in roughs and all that kind of thing. I was always really suspicious about productions where they kind of suddenly stuck it in a different era.
It's hard, isn't it?
But when it works, it really works.
That's right.
And that was the Othello was a point in case.
Yeah,
for me.
I saw Winter's Tale a couple of weeks ago, the Judy and Branagh company one, and it's unbelievable. I think it's almost probably the best production I've ever seen of a Shakespeare production.
Wow.
If there's no, and I was watching, like Mark Rylance actually, I was watching Branagh I was just watching him deliver his lines and just seeing, because just looking at what he does, and there's a sort of sense it can often happen in the language where you miss an apostrophe between an ont or a kind of, I don't know this, but he didn't miss any. You could hear the apostrophes almost in the words, and the kind of, not in a bad way, but he used every single part of every single word to give the sense of what he was trying to convey, and he did it faultlessly.
Wow.
And I've never seen Branagh on stage before, and I must be honest, between us and the whole world, like I wasn't really sure quite what it would be like as a stage actor, because I've seen him on film, and he's great, but I get it. I'm like, okay, I see. I know why Branagh's who Branagh is now, because it was remarkable. So if you can possibly get in to see that, I would try and go, because it's an overwhelming production. Do you think Shakespeare has a place in education or society today, away from just the play, away from performance or theatre? Do you think it should be studied at school? Do you think there's a value in that? Given what we've said and discussed, do you think that it's something that should still be pursued, or do you think it can get in the way of the work, get in the way of the joy of Shakespeare? Do you know?
It doesn't need to get in the way of the joy of Shakespeare. It's all kind of down to how it's taught. For most subjects, there are some subjects that you're kind of like just drawn to as a kid. So no matter what, you're just drawn to it, and others you get drawn to it because of your teacher. It's the Mr. Fielding in Dead Poets Society. It's kind of like a teacher can absolutely turn you onto a subject, and because their understanding and their passion of it is you get some of that glitter. Yeah. It rubs off on you. And so I think particularly with something like Shakespeare, I think having teachers that really love it, if they really love it, they probably really understand it. Yeah. And if they don't love it, then they probably don't understand it. You can teach it academically, but that is taking the joy out of it. And I think that having a 10-year-old who has gone to see albeit his mum in a production, it's still, we were still able to talk about stuff, and he saw it in 9-year-old terms. He was 8 then, actually, in 8-year-old terms, and that's fine, because I think the themes within it are worth talking about. The relationships in it are worth talking about. The language, again, people get hung up on the language, and in a way, I'm sure it's been done. There must be kind of companies around the world who've done, Hamlet in mime. Sure, yeah. And you kind of go, that doesn't make the story any less powerful. No. So, people get hung up on the language very, very quickly. The one time that this is almost like a confessional, I kind of...
people are going to see this.
Yes. That's fine. It happened. Cool. It's real. So, what am I going to do? Was that for the Prince's Trust, for which I'm an ambassador, they had an evening of reciting Shakespeare at the Globe. And I got asked, as an ambassador, would you do it? And I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And they said, would you do Bottom, waking up from his dream in Midsummer Night's Dream? And it's where he kind of says, starveling, flute, trying to work it out.
It's a lovely little piece.
Yeah, methinks I was, methought I had it. It was that, anyway, that's it. And I arrived at the Globe, and the director kind of said, I was the last person to arrive because I'd forgotten my jacket. I had to go home to get my jacket. And I came back. I was the last person. People were queuing up outside. And he said, look, we have a quick go at it on stage. And I suddenly realised I didn't know it. I didn't know it at all. Oh, God. And so I had this...
That's the Hamlet nightmare, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
The night before the plane, I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's awful.
And so I'm standing there, and I kind of say, I've got a bit of paper. Methinks I was... thought I had... And I looked up, and I could see the director going, try it again. Try it again. Oh. And I thought, this is awful. And I was surrounded by... there was Diana Rigg was there, and who else? Timothy West, Gwyneth Paltrow was there. All these extraordinary people. And I thought, right, I'm on in the second half, so I've got the first half to learn it. So I'm pounding the corridors of the Globe, learning this thing, learning it. And I didn't really know the play very well. And I kind of sat down and I thought, I don't know that. I know that refers to something, and I don't know what it refers to. And I just thought, I'm surrounded by all these amazing actors. Let me ask one of them. Yeah. And it just so happened that the person in the next sort of study carol thing next to me, I kind of thought, well, ask him. He's the closest person. And I said, excuse me, could you just help me with this? Do you know Midsummer Night's Dream? At which point Paul Schofield said, yes, I do. And I said, what does this thing mean? And he said, well, that refers to the thing. I went, oh, okay. And I said, well, what about that? Is that? And he said, no, that's kind of blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, that makes sense. That's great. Thank you. Thanks very much. And it was my turn to come on. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. The place was full. Royals were in. All these people. The
Royals were.
Paul Schofield had been on twice and was just stunning. Yeah. And I had to go out. And I was standing there and I thought, I can't just go out there and be staring at them and they were staring at me and then me walk off. So I'll take my bit of paper with me. I'll take my script with me. Yeah. And I thought I'll use it because he's got a list at the beginning anyway. Yeah. So I'll be able to kind of go, starveling, flute, and I can look down and go, that's my line, and carry on. I was absolutely shaking. And I had to go through the orchestra. There was an orchestra on stage. And they all had the string section all had their bows up like that. And I thought, oh, that's a forest. Great, I can buy myself some time. So I went through them, moving them aside, which got a laugh. Yeah. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm on the stage. I'm kind of like, yeah, that's fine. And then I got to the front and I thought, bloody hell, there's all these people here. I thought, what are these people doing there? And I thought, oh my goodness, they're all up there and they're at my feet. And I thought, okay, this is like somewhere between the sort of plays that I've seen, proscenium march plays, and sort of stand-up. Yeah. It's a weird kind of, okay. And I started to play with it. I started to play with the text. I didn't put the rhythms in where they're traditionally supposed to go because I just thought, I'm taking it off the audience. And I've got to take it off them. I could just plough through it doing a kind of iambic, and if they're laughing, then they're going to miss that. And so let me kind of play with it. And I ended up not looking at my bit of paper at all. And it was just the most extraordinary experience. Yeah. And I came off, and I think it was Joe Fiennes was there. Yeah. And he came up to me. I think he was doing a bit at the end, and he kind of came up. And he said, you smashed it, man. He said, you smashed it. And I went, oh, I'm so relieved. And the director came running down and said, that's it. He said, you did it up the arse. I was kind of like, I think is that a good thing? That's kind of, what play is that from? But it was that thing of realising that actually in the playing of it as well, that there's a lot more laxity than the traditionalists will have you believe. That it's not just, the rhythms are absolutely there, and the non-rhythms are there, and they work. Yeah. For a particular audience. There might be another audience that comes in. When we did it for the kids, hitting the iambic and hitting all the alliterations just wouldn't have meant anything to them. And so I think there's just more freedom in the way that Shakespeare's played now, which makes it more accessible.
And as you say, that's one of the things that like Mark does very well as well is that thing of, you can hear the rhythm in what he's doing. Yeah. Because as he would say, and as Ian McKellen, all these guys would say, you would say it's like the rhythm is like, it is there anyway. It's our heartbeat, and therefore it's there. But you get a sense with Mark that he doesn't obey any rules, but he follows all the rules. But he's confident enough to just not have to re-quantify any of them ever for himself. It seems. I know the reality is slightly different to that, probably. But
well, no, I think you're right. I mean, I remember kind of listening to Patrick Stewart do it, and I thought, wow, that sounds like conversation. And Kenneth Branagh as well. It just sounds conversational, and yet, as you say, the rhythms are all there. And I think that in many ways it's being aware of the rhythm and then chucking it away. And I think that when I was watching Shakespeare growing up, the sort of ones we were taken to, the rhythm was was the king, and so everything was slave to that. Yeah. And so within that, the meaning sometimes to someone who's 14 just kind of went. Yeah. You know, you think, I don't understand what 4 of those words meant. You've said them in a particular way that still doesn't clarify it for me. It's like True. You know, the British going abroad and saying, where is the bar? And someone saying, I don't speak English, and then going, where is the bar? It doesn't help me. It really doesn't help me. You're going to have to find another way to communicate that. You know.
You've already asked the question once. Just saying it loud is not the... or putting an accent on it doesn't help either.
No.
Just so you know. Do you have any sort of musical collection? Are you musical? Do you play instruments or anything, or is it?
I can't read music, but I play. I strum a guitar.
Because I read. God, this is a while ago now, so it might be wrong because it might be one of those facts that doesn't exist. But I read that you grew up or were friends with Nitin Sawhney. Yeah. Okay, because Beyond Skin was literally it was a 3-year album for me. Literally, it was that album that I listened to onwards and onwards and onwards. And I just wondered, like, whether there's a connection on a musical scale between language, not just Shakespeare, but language and music to you. Do you
I
see
absolutely believe that.
Right.
It's kind of, I think others may well disagree. I think I'm quite good at accents. You know, I've got an ear for accents. And for me, accents it was always a musicality. Yeah. And although I can't read music, you know, I've composed stuff for TV and stuff like that. And
is that you or me?
No, it's not me. I'll put it.
I do apologise.
You know, professionals put it on flight mode.
Yeah, I thought I had done. I know. I mean, thanks for putting that out on camera. I'm going to have to cut that out clearly. And I just literally bumped one of my really good mates. I'm like, yes, no. Oh, he's gone. Anyway, it's all gone. Oh, I'll pay for that.
It's real life. It's real life. It's fine. Embrace it.
It's really
Embrace
happening,
it,
man. Sorry. Yes. So musicality, and you composed and.
Yeah, and I do think languages have a musicality, and they have a kind of melody. I think, outside of rhythm. You know, people talk about Shakespeare's rhythms a lot because of the iambic pentameter, and because of alliterations and the poetry and the lyrical quality of some of the work. But I think melody actually, it's really interesting when you hear Shakespeare done in an accent that you weren't expecting. So, hearing it with people with Indian accents or Caribbean accents or something is really interesting because you kind of go, actually, the sense of it is still the same. It's kind of part of its universality is that it just then feels like it's owned by everyone. You know, it's not just. I remember, when I did the TIE workshop stuff, and I remember the director, Jatinder Verma, said to me, he said, "There's a really interesting thing that happens when you read out Shakespeare, which I wasn't aware of." And he said, "Your voice becomes ever so slightly clipped when you speak it." And that was just a hangover from the way it was taught and the rest of it, rather than...
And seeing it, I guess, and all those things.
It reinforces that maybe I have to be someone else to read this. Yeah. And actually, when you hear it in different accents, in local, regional accents and all the rest of it, you suddenly go, actually, do you know what? It can just be me. Yeah. And that's, you're talking about... Kenneth Branagh and Mark Rylance, the great Shakespeare actors, is that their voices haven't changed. No. The bad ones, you can hear them speaking like this, and then suddenly they start, they're tonally changed, and you kind of go, who the bloody hell is that? Yeah. And sometimes it's an actor saying, look at me, I'm playing a part. But, and so good actors don't have to do that, unless, there's a good reason. But particularly with Shakespeare, it's kind of, no, you can speak it.
Yeah. And also you hear, I saw quite a lot of the Globe to Globe things they did a couple of years ago where they had, I think, 37 different companies from around the world who went
that's
to
right,
Globe.
yes. Yeah.
I think I saw like 17 of them or something. I was really I really wanted to, and weirdly enough, it makes me sound like a Shakespeare nut, and I am in one way, but in another way I'm not. He is another playwright to me. It's not just like my life is Shakespeare, ironically. But what was lovely about seeing all of those productions is you hear, some of it was in different languages. So but you still understood what was going on. But the stuff which was performed still in English, but with different accents in different regions and different, suddenly you hear different things in the plays that you've never heard before. And I've always found, I could never tell this to teachers years ago, but I had to always read Shakespeare in a northern accent when I first get it, because I still, although my accent isn't northern anymore, I understand words better. It sounds really messed up, I know, but I understand words better in that dialect than I do in this dialect. So then I can, once I've got it into my head, I hear it as it is, and then I can morph it into my own voice now. It doesn't mean anything. Instead of doing it in my own voice and always feeling like I'm putting on a voice. So it's a sort of weird, and I guess, people like Olivier and stuff, that's just how they spoke. But everyone was like, oh, we have to speak like Olivier to do Shakespeare. But that was just what his accent, his voice was. He was had a very good voice that was very rather bred, and that was just how they all spoke.
But also, the style of acting has changed, and so, if that was the received way of doing it, then that's the way that was acting, and then post, in films certainly, post 60s kitchen sink, all that stuff where regional accents became more acceptable. Things changed at that point. And I think there's something, as you say, there's, the Much Ado About Nothing that the RSC did that Mira was in, they did it in Indian accents, and that was a specific decision to do that, because there was something else that emerged from the text with that accent. It wasn't an overblown kind of comedy pitch, but until you get to characters like Dogberry and stuff like that, the comic relief. But otherwise, there's something else that comes out of it. And I think that, as I mentioned, I think the thing that really comes out of it for me is the universality of the stories. Yes, they can be set in sort of London or in Venice or wherever they were originally set, but something about the language you kind of go, actually, just the way different accents hit consonants, or the way different accents bend vowels, just gives it a different sort of flavour. So
I wasn't fortunate enough to see that production of As You Like It, wasn't it?
Much Ado.
Oh, it was Much Ado. Okay, and that's probably why.
I
can't find it anywhere.
How was As You Like It?
Can't find it anywhere. But how did that affect the audiences? Because there's this weird thing of and obviously we're talking about a lot at the moment of diversity and gender blind casting and all these other things, and which are really brilliant, and I think it's a fantastic thing that's happening finally. There's still a long way to go, but it's good. And there used to be that thing of black people don't go to the theatre, and I've heard that even recently. I can't believe you said it recently. And it's like, no, you kind of need to make plays that reach out rather than just becoming these sort of white-centric kind of themed plays. Now, was the audience? Did the audience respond to the fact that was an Indian production, essentially? I mean, partially by the RSC. Did it have a very different cultural mix of attendees?
I think it did because of the actors in it. I think, but also I think theatre is still way more colourblind than its kind of televisual and film counterparts, and audiences are much more. I'll tell you what it is. I played King Arthur in Spamalot, and King of the Britons, and I was asked.
This is great, by the way.
Oh, thanks very much. Did you say it? Did you?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I saw it twice actually. Anyway, carry on.
Did you?
Yeah.
The question I got asked at the beginning, when I was starting, they said, Asian King Arthur, eh? And so I'd give them, a couple of gags, and say, well, of course he was Indian, so that's why, it's Art Malik, Arthur, King of the Britons. If you needed to get your horseshoes shod at 1 o'clock in the morning, which you weren't, it was the Indian shop, it was the only place that was open. And so there was that, and I kind of said, but in all honesty, I said, if they're still thinking about my ethnicity by the time they leave, I haven't done my job.
No.
They haven't bought into me as a character, and so my job is they may come in going King of the Britons. If they leave still thinking that, then that's me not being good enough. And I think the same. And in theatre you can do that. In theatre you can, walk on and say, oh well, that's an odd pairing, whether it be by age, by gender, by ethnicity or whatever. And it, if the play's good and the actors are good, you won't be thinking that when you leave. And that's the beauty of it and the importance of it, I think, as well.
Yeah, and it's that whole argument of life imitating art imitating life or whatever. What I find fascinating is that if we go out there as a community of actors, directors, producers, and make work that pushes all those boundaries. It doesn't even push them; it just changes them. It just goes, "Oh, we're just doing something different with it." Then quite quickly, people instantly forget. And the best example in my head of that, I always think about, is the smoking ban. Like, oh no one will go to pubs anymore. Oh, I won't go because I want to smoke. And like literally, you go into a pub now, you can't even imagine that we used to walk in when people were smoking.
Do you know, we were having this conversation at the theatre just the other day, and saying to some of the younger upstart actors about smoking in cinemas and on the tube. I mean, the tubes. Yeah, on the planes. Yeah.
We got on a plane. At the back of the plane, there was like a fug of cigars and cigarettes.
It would be. I mean, cinemas, they would have a non-smoking section in a cinema. Yeah. The smoke didn't know. That just kind of drifted.
It was always on the left in Sheffield.
It was on the left.
And it was like they would fug down this side of it, and you could see the projector getting caught up in it. And then
there is that kind of romantic notion. If you sort of watch films like Brief Encounter and stuff, they have got that smoke filtering through the thing, which looks quite pretty. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. People do kind of embrace change a lot. Yeah. The idea of change is frightening to some people.
Yeah. But it's so quick to happen if we embrace it that I don't know why it takes so long.
Going back to still my favourite Shakespeare on film, Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing. Yeah. The casting of Denzel Washington was brilliant. Yeah. It was a masterstroke because him being the head of this clan, one of the brothers. Yeah. You kind of anyone at the beginning who might have thought, really, within 5 seconds, you just kind of went. He's one of that. They are a group of people, and that's it. And he's head of that clan, and these soldiers didn't give it a second thought.
Yeah. Shakespeare on film. You mentioned Much Ado. Have you seen many more of the films? And do you like Shakespeare on film? Do you like what they do to it, or?
I do. I think that the Brando, Gielgud, Julius Caesar, I think was probably the first one that I saw on film, and that was great. I think when it's shot as a film, I think it works better than shooting it as a play on film. Yeah. Shakespeare in the theatre with a good cast, well directed, is just sensational. It's just an amazing experience. You just feel like you're experiencing it with them, and suddenly with film, you're not. Yeah. And so if it's played out in the same way, in a kind of proscenium sort of way, with the odd reverse angle, it just feels weird. And I think the films that really worked were because they were shot as films. They were made by filmmakers. Yeah. So I think it does work. And again, I think the stories are solid. The relationships are solid. I mean, I really enjoyed the other one that I enjoyed, and again, it's a play that I really love and I'd love to do as well. Is Taming of the Shrew, the Burton and Taylor one.
I've never seen that one actually.
It's great.
I bet it is.
I mean, it's Richard Burton, you know. But having said that, there was one of my favourite episodes of Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and
Sybil Shepherd.
Taming of the Shrew.
My favourite. I remember that one. That was my favourite TV series after Miami Vice.
I was gonna go and then you said Miami Vice. And I went, no, I didn't.
Those two were just like
No, Moonlighting has been a huge influence on me. Same. Because what they identified, which I thought was really smart about that episode, and the episode starts with a kid saying, "I want to watch Moonlighting." And the mum saying, "Go and do your Shakespeare homework." Yeah. And him going, "But I want to watch Moonlighting." And she goes, "Look, they're just a couple that bicker and it's nonsense. Yeah. Go and do your Shakespeare." And he goes, "I hate this." And he goes up and he opens up Taming of the Shrew. Yeah. And then we go into... and it's the characters of Moonlighting playing out Taming of the Shrew in an hour. And what was really smart about that episode, it was a brilliant series. And the first 2-3 series were
unbelievable.
Some of the best television I've ever seen. Really inventive. Was that they went... Okay, we've got this, male-female bickering couple. The will they, won't they thing. Should they be together? That thing. And that was based on the whole screwball comedy thing. Yeah. The Cary Grant, Rosalind Russell movies and stuff like that. And then they absolutely found its source, which is kind of Taming of the Shrew. Yeah. It's Kate and, what's his face?
Yeah.
in. And so you know that through line for me again when I saw, and they the moonlighting episode they did in rhyme as well. The episode is called Atomic Shakespeare.
Right.
That's the name of the episode.
Okay.
They did it in rhyme as well.
And then you have like Mr. Pesto. Is it Mr. Pesto?
Yeah.
And you got the clowns. You got the two clowns who were there as well. Who were sort of like. I mean, it's just. Yeah. I mean, that series was unbelievable.
You know, they kind of changed the end. It was kind of Mira and I did the "'Tis the Moon, No 'Tis the Sun" scene from Taming the Shrew for a benefit thing at the Almeida Theatre in North London. And Michael Attenborough directing it. And I said to Michael, I said, look, can we play with the text a bit? And he said, yeah, okay. And I said, let's, because there's a kind of, you know, the hint of sexism, misogyny at the end of that play with you know, the man forcing the woman to kind of say, no, it is the moon when it's daytime.
I know, it's a very sort of,
And I said, so I kind of had a look at it. So I kind of did a little mini adaptation. And I said, let's keep the words, but let's switch the genders halfway through and see what happens. And it was a really interesting thing, which was that, you know, the bloke who's being blokey suddenly is put on the back foot. And it's the woman who's kind of going, are you going to say it? What are you going to say? And what are you going to do here? And the rest of it. And that's the joy of it. The beauty of the text is that you can play with it. And those adaptations that do play with it, that's what plays are for. I mean, the word is play. I mean, it's the hint is in the term. But, you know, when contemporary shows make such a direct reference to it, you kind of get an idea of its lasting appeal. I mean, that moonlighting episode is extraordinary.
I'd so forgotten about that, actually, till you said
I mean, they break into kind of like, you know, a Motown song and they do all that stuff.
And all sorts of stuff.
But, you know, in essence, it's there. The relationships are clear and, you know, that journey, that arc is there. But,
So, you mentioned that you'd like to play Benedict.
Yeah, Benedict is kind of, it's the one part in Shakespeare that I think that I'm most connected with. And I think maybe it's because of the wit. Maybe it's because, you know, for him and Beatrice in that particular play, the kind of wit uncovers kind of levels of sacrifice and depth. And I think that journey, I think for me is one that I kind of, I don't know, for some reason relate to. You know, I'm not particularly heroic as a person, but you know, you kind of, I understood in that play that banter, which is something I love anyway, doesn't have to be the be all and end all. No. You know, you can uncover the banter and find something actually deeper and sweeter.
And quite often, humour and banter and those things are used as heroic tools as well, aren't they? For kind of dealing with situations, for kind of stopping conflict, for counteracting that kind of conflict that can occur, I suppose, as well.
I think you're right. I think, and again, going back to the plays, I mean, that's the thing that so struck me about the Adrian Lester Othello, which was that, you know, there are people go, there's Shakespeare's tragedies and there's, you know, Shakespeare's comedies, and Othello was patently, you know, tragedy of the Moor. And but within it were these kind of little gems, that were really funny moments that were dark and funny and twisted and funny. And I kind of related to the play in a way that I'd never done before. Partly because people had said, it's a tragedy, which means don't laugh. Exactly. There's nothing funny about it. You know, you think tragedy's funny, do you? And you suddenly look at this and you go, actually, do you know, within it, there are moments like that. And I think that's part of what makes Shakespeare a genius, which is that, you know, they reflect life in a much closer way. Take away the language, the fancy words, the kind of, you know, the poetry, the rhyming couplets, and actually it reflects people. It reflects those basic things of envy and jealousy and love and loss and banter.
Yeah.
Banter, for goodness sake.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I remember Baz Luhrmann saying to us, which has really stuck with me. He said, great tragedy walks a hair's breadth with great comedy.
Yeah.
Which, of course, as someone who works in, the whole industry from writer, director, all those things, you understand that anyway. And it's that fine line of something that can be really sad, but also really funny.
Do you know what? I have never approached comedy and drama differently as an actor at all. And I think it was Peter Ustinov, I think, that said, drama is just comedy gone wrong. Yeah. And it's that close, And I remember somebody giving an example once of, someone walks along the street and they slip on a banana skin and it's hilarious. They fall on their ass and it's hilarious. If they fell backwards and cracked their head, suddenly it's not. And it's that fine line. Yeah. And so even in the sketch stuff that I've done, for me, there was always a character at the base of it. So, on goodness gracious me, I did a guru, a kind of Maharishi type character. And, the gags were that, he doesn't know anything about Eastern mysticism. Yeah. And so when someone asks him about kind of anything mystical, he has to make it up with reference to kind of like, Star Wars or the Queen or whatever. And for me, fine, that's a gag. For me, the character was in the moment that someone says, can you tell us about, Krishna? And he goes, what? That for me was the character. The character was that, I'm going to be unmasked. I've been caught out. That to me is a characteristic. Yeah. The rest of it are gags. Yeah. And so even in the sketch stuff, that's what I was trying to find. And it's exactly the same for drama. So, that hair's breadth thing that Baz Luhrmann was talking about, even in Shakespeare's tragedies, it's a deft eye, if you can have a deft eye.
Yeah, I think so. Cow eye?
Yeah, that's right. Eye and eye. That can spot those.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it's interesting you mentioned, I'm only going to touch on this briefly because I can talk about this for days and hours and years on Star Wars. But, there's that thing that everyone's sort of going, it's amazing, stories and blah, blah, blah. But, it's almost identical. I mean, so many of his stories they follow that Joseph Campbell model, which really which basically follows all of Shakespeare anyway, really. The tragedy plot and the kind of, all those things. And so no wonder it did so well, because it actually obeys rules absolutely implicitly, that film.
I think that, it does. It's that whole thing about 7 plots or whatever. Yeah. It covers all of those. And I was reading somewhere that someone had written something which said that Casablanca does the same thing.
Is that right?
It covers all of those things. It's got kind of, boy loses girl kind of story. It's got redemption in it. It's got the heroic thing. It's got the person who rags to riches. I mean, all of it is within it. And Star Wars is exactly the same thing.
Yeah. It's almost like Hamlet, Star Wars. In a way. I mean, like you take a few liberties with it, but cool. Well, I mean, I think unless there's anything that you thought I might ask, which I've not. I mean, I can always talk about these things for days and hours, but. We've been talking for almost an hour, so from your point of view, is there anything additional you'd like to say that you think might be useful for younger actors approaching Shakespeare, or just younger actors?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, Sodom. Make your own way in life, for goodness sake. Do you want handouts? No, I think
I'm going to decontextualise that, yeah?
Yeah, you can sub that down. No, I think that, that as we've covered, I think, don't approach it with any rules. Own it. It's kind of, access it in whichever way you can. It doesn't have to be, if you access it through the language, that's great. But you can, access it through the emotional narrative. You can relate it to people that you know. I mean, you can do all those things. And also, don't be prissy about how you access it, whether it's the animated tales, whether it's kind of like a TV show that spoofs it. And, the interesting thing about spoofing Shakespeare is that you still have to take the elements in order to spoof them. And so you still access it in a way, And so all of those things are valid. I mean, you know, genius doesn't really cover it, does it? I mean, it's just extraordinary that somebody from, you know, the 17th century, writing in the 17th century, can still be valid today or given validity by a group of actors, a director and a stage.
And I remember seeing Lenny Henry and Frank Bruno do Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, that's right.
I think it was the first comic relief, I think, on stage.
I remember that, yeah.
Like, oh, Juliet, and like, it was all that kind of thing. And again, that's the fascinating thing. It's seeped into so much of our pop culture that we don't even, as you said, you almost said it at the very beginning, we don't even quite realise how much it sort of underwrites or underscores our...
I mean, I think, for goodness sake, I think, is a Shakespeare term. I think Henry V or something like that. I mean, you know, shuffle off this mortal coil, all that stuff that we kind of use. I think I said be all and end all. I think that might as well be. I mean, there's just so much of it in stitches. Being in stitches, you know, we don't give it a second thought. The one thing I would say, the one analogy that I would draw for myself is that I love film music and I quite like classical music. You know, there are bits that I really, really love. And I grew up not listening to any classical music at all. It was the music that you had to, again, forced to listen to as you walked into assembly. And so I hated it. I had those kind of associations. And then I heard bits of classical music played in films. And that gave me a different association. And I went back and then found what the original piece of music was. And this is a horrible confession. Do I really want to make this confession? Sorry, it's real. It happened. I embrace it. Was that Hooked on Classics?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember Hooked on Classics?
Yeah, my dad used to have them in his car, and that was how I first came across classical music. Tapped me right into it.
That was it. So these were kind of like 10-second little snippets with a behind it.
Yeah, totally.
Done in a poppy kind of way. But they were 10-second little things of classical. And I kind of listened to that and thought, I think I know that one. I really like that one. And that's how I found my way into classical music. In the same way with Shakespeare, a sketch, a kind of, you know, soliloquy that someone performs, a cartoon version, you know, whatever it might be, The Lion King, you know, is a kind of classic example of a Shakespeare story put in a completely different context. Do it, because, you know, if you're meant to find your way to it, you will. And once you do, it's just a really glorious playground.
Wicked.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, man.